All right. Logical fallacies. Okay, here we go. So logical fallacies, the paper you have in front of you is just to kind of fill in as you go. So I'll try to prompt you what you should be filling in, but for the most part, it's pretty self-explanatory. So these are the types of things we want to look out for in regards to the types of arguments that are being presented to us, just to be good consumers of argumentative pieces. And that includes writing, commercials, film, documentaries, making sure you are self-aware of the fact that you are being presented some type of argument that's not necessarily accurate. So what logical fallacies are is they try to bolster weaker arguments. So if you are a strong argumentative writer, you avoid these types of logical fallacies. Politicians, advertisers, debate opponents, and I'm sure you'll recognize even some of your friends have qualities they use logical fallacies in everyday life to try to win their argument over. So being self-aware is half the battle. There are a ton of logical fallacies out there. The ones I'm going to cover today in this presentation and the ones in your study guide are the most common. And you are going to be writing an essay on this, identifying different logical fallacies in articles that you read. So that's why it's important that you understand these. All right, so starting off, hasty generalization. This one's a really easy one to spot in that it is an inference drawn from insufficient evidence. So it's making some kind of claim about one particular thing and basically bunching that into one group. So if I were to say, oh, all girls are dramatic, that's a hasty generalization. That's boxing everyone in, making certain assumptions without having the evidence to back it up. So example, my new Toyota broke down, so all Toyotas must be poorly made. That's just one specific example and therefore does not support the overall idea that all Toyotas are terrible. You might just have had a bad Toyota or a bad purchase. So it's making an assumption about something as a whole. All Democrats are X. All Republicans are X. All people who believe in global warming, X. Global warming in general is X. Those types of statements without really breaking down the real issue are examples of hasty generalization. Easy one to identify and to kind of look out for. Usually it's made about people. Faulty causality. So that's the next one. It is the incorrect assumption that because something happened, the next thing happened. And it's the assumption that those moments are connected. That the first caused the second. But what comes down to it is correlation does not imply causation. So because things happen simultaneously does not necessarily mean that it was the cause. So if I'm walking up the steps, Marshall's walking down the steps, I fall, that does not mean that it was Marshall's fault that I fell up the steps. So we have to be aware that when people say, let me think of an example. Oh, I bought a chocolate bar off of Susie Q today, and then I barfed after school. I barfed after school probably because I ate Susie Q's chocolate bar. We don't necessarily know that that one thing led to the next. There could be several reasons why you barfed. That was a really weird example. I apologize, but there it is. Correlation does not imply causation. So I dyed my hair red last week. This week, 3 other girls showed up to school with freshly dyed red hair. They must have made the change because they liked my hair. Or it's because people just do that, not necessarily because you started it. So that's a big move with politicians to say XYZ happened because of the initial A. So think about when people pretend or assume that things are related. To come up with a better example than the barf example. Because of the, let's say people make a claim because of the event, the recent event on the Capitol, people no longer have trust in their government in a recent survey. Okay, well, that recent survey, one, you have to be aware who was surveyed, in what context, how many people, but also can you really tie those two events together? Has that, and I'm just making this up, has that survey, was that conducted before the events of the Capitol, or what political party did you survey? So you can't always assume that things are connected. Faulty causality. Either or. I love this one. This one's easy to find because it's literally going to say either or in it for the most part. So it's an unfair oversimplification of an issue by saying only 2 options are available. So that would be like me sitting in this class saying either you get an A in this class or you don't care about my class. I know that's not true. There could be many reasons why you don't get an A in the class, but that does not necessarily mean it's because you don't care about it. So the either or assumption is just like a really, hey, there's only 2 options. This one's kind of easier to find too. There's only 2 options when it comes to a solution. Well, that's not always fair to make that assumption, and very narrow-minded to make that assumption. So to say, well, if you don't support the inauguration of President Biden, then you're not a true Democrat. Well, that's not necessarily true. There could be other reasons why you don't support the inauguration. So that's just another example of making sure you understand all the possibilities and not being limited to 2. So, like Ricky Bobby says, if you aren't first, you're last. Well, that's not really true either. There are spaces in between. So you have to be open to a lot of different interpretations and opinions. The flawed logic of Ricky Bobby. Slippery slope. I also love this one. So slippery slope is an exaggeration of consequences. If you don't vote for this person, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and then the end of the world is as we know it's going to happen. America will crumble actually beneath our feet. Pretending like one move is going to create some kind of future dramatic disaster. So a consequence of action designed to show that a misstep could result in disaster in the future. Usually it's pretty dramatic. A lot of slippery slope, you're going to find that in opinion pieces. Well, if we don't make this choice or make this change, then XYZ is going to happen. And usually XYZ is pretty dramatic. So we can't allow students to bring beverages into the auditorium. Okay, that sounds logical. Why? Well, if we do, soon they'll start bringing in snacks, then full meals. Then the place will be filled with trash, rats, and cockroaches. And we'll have to condemn the whole building. You can see how that's clearly out of control. So that's an example of slippery slope, often found in opinion pieces that are published. Even at the newspaper, like New York Times, Washington Post, tend to have slippery slopes in them. Maybe not quite as super obvious as that, but obvious enough that you're like, maybe it won't be that dramatic. The bandwagon, that's number 5. So make sure you write down bandwagon. I like this one. And this is probably one that you've noticed with your friends more than you'll notice with publications. So I am going to argue this side because that's what everybody else is doing. I can't really back it up. yes, I believe in global warming, or no, I don't think global warming is real, and just because. That's just what I think, without being able to have facts that prove it. You're not going to see this a lot in, like I said, not necessarily in publications, not necessarily in news, more like your everyday, well, I just believe that because that's just what I believe, without really having knowledge or taking a stance. So, hey, classic strategy to sell to teens. Oh, they took away my favorite one. So a classic thing for voters too. Well, everybody is wearing Abercrombie and Fitch, so you need to do that too. You need to be like everybody else, so buy this product. If you don't have a phone, you're doomed forever. You got to look like everybody else. So this is a big advertisement one too. Jump on board. Same thing with like celebrities going on and saying who they vote for. Well, I'm voting for XYZ because Beyonce told me to. Just not having a stance to back it up, just kind of jumping on board without that support. Sentimental appeal. So sentimental appeal distracts your emotions. And so you see this sad puppy who has one eye, it's shaking, it has a wheel for a back leg, and it's in this sad little cold corner, it's snowing, and you're like, well, man, now I gotta donate and save all the puppies of the world. And so that's an example of sentimental appeal. But then it's interesting, and you find out that the full picture isn't given. In 2012, the CEO was paid that salary. So it makes you wonder how much of that money is really going to that three-legged, one-eyed, cold, sad puppy. All right, scare tactic. Using fear to sway people by exaggerating dangers that are really beyond their statistical likelihood. So creating fear in order to get people to jump on board. So a lot of times, and we've seen this, if you pick the other side, they're going to totally ruin the quality of life for middle class voters. The middle class is always the one that's targeted because it's the biggest class. And so they try to convince you that if you don't vote for them, if you vote for the opponent, the end of the world as we know it will occur. So that is a very obvious scare tactic. Same thing with some types of products out there too. If you don't buy our product, then this might happen to you. Appeal to false authority. So this is when an unqualified person or an institution serves as a credible source of information. This is becoming a really popular thing now in commercials. When like Peyton Manning and Brad Paisley want you to buy insurance. Do you think they probably know how to do like an insurance estimate and quote? No. Do you think they're well versed on different areas of insurance and availability of insurance? No. But they are being used. Hey, I'm going to go buy my insurance with that company because Peyton Manning says it's a really good idea. An example, my 6th grade teacher said that girls will fall in love with a guy who knows how to dance. Therefore, if I want to win some hearts, I need to learn how to dance. And there's commercials out there like when they have like older retired football players trying to sell life insurance to old people. There you go. When they had like Justin Timberlake was on a commercial selling TVs at one point. Like he's not well versed in televisions. He just gets to sponsor that. So like just whenever you see celebrity endorsements, not that those endorsements can't be real, but they're not a real authority when it comes to the authenticity of that product. All right, ad hominem. So this means to the man. This occurs when a person is attacking someone's character rather than the quality of ideas. So like if you have two political figures and the one says, listen, I think we need to make our after school programs at our rec center more available to our students. And then the person comes back and says, oh, you don't care about children. I saw you walk right past a Girl Scout cookie stand at Sam's Club the other day. You don't really care about kids. That has nothing to do with the person's actual argument. You're attacking his or her character rather than the quality of the idea itself. This happens a lot in politics. A specific type, tucoque, occurs when you accuse your opponent of being a hypocrite instead of actually addressing the point. This occurs all the time in politics. We're going to attack the person, and in the media, really. We're going to attack their history, their personal history, their records, instead of really focusing on what they stand for as a person. We'd rather attack them emotionally and attack their character instead. So political campaigns use ad hominem for rival candidates instead of really focusing on the issues at hand that matter to people. Straw man, misrepresenting someone's argument so it's easier to attack and knock down. So if I were to say, like I'm running for office and I say, hey, I want to transfer some of our funding for the animal shelter and move it a little bit over into our playground fund since our playground was damaged in the tornado recently. And my opponent says, you hate puppies. You're a puppy murderer. Like that would be an example of straw man, like twisting someone's argument and knocking them down that way. It's similar to ad hominem, but it's changing the argument so that it's twisted from the person's original intent. So an ad for Chipotle says a burrito restaurant chain states you can't live on ramen noodles alone. So a straw man argument would be, yes, many college students eat cheap ramen noodles, but no one's arguing that ramen is the only food they should or would want to eat. So that's the straw man argument version of that. All right, so those are the logical fallacies. And then the other ones that I just wanted to, if you look at your study guide or if you've gone through the study guide, there are some other ones to definitely take time to review. Missing the point. The point, that particular logical fallacy is when the premise of an argument doesn't support a conclusion. And so the conclusion that you draw really isn't attached to the argument at all. So there's a big disconnect between the two. It has false cause in there, slippery slope, appeal to authority. And one that's not covered in this presentation is ad populum, which is kind of similar to bandwagon. It's just titled differently. Means you jump on and it takes advantage of the desire most people have to fit in order to get the audience to accept his or her argument. Appeal to pity. You try to get people to feel sorry for someone in order to win them over. Oh, well, we should vote for that guy because he gets made fun of a lot. Well, is that a valid reason to vote somebody in? Red herring is the other one. Red herring is when you go so off topic and on a tangent that we drift away from the original issue. So me setting up the argument that it's students should be allowed to wear hats in school, and that whole argument transitioning into how students can't make right decisions on their own without having the need to be influenced by adult figures. So like we've totally missed the point and need to head back to the original argument, which is that students should or should not wear hats in the building. And then rationalization. People come up with excuses and weak explanations for their own and other behavior, but you're actually avoiding the real causes. So make sure you check out that the study guide there to pick up on those other definitions that weren't in the presentation. And